The small town of Millbrook, Massachusetts, held many secrets within its weathered tombstones and winding paths of Pine Grove Cemetery. Among the ancient maples and carefully tended flower beds, something extraordinary was happening, something that would touch the hearts of everyone who witnessed it. Every night, as the last rays of sunlight painted the sky in shades of amber and purple, a mysterious black and white cat would appear, making its way through the iron gates with purposeful steps. Sarah Miller, the cemetery's longtime caretaker, first noticed the feline visitor on a crisp autumn evening while doing her final rounds. The cat caught her attention not just because of its striking appearance, with pristine white paws that seemed to dance across the graves, but because of its peculiar behavior. Unlike the strays that occasionally wandered through, this cat moved with intention, as if drawn by an invisible force to the same spot night after night. The grave that drew the cat's attention belonged to Elizabeth Betty Thompson, who had passed away 6 months earlier at the age of 86. Betty had been a beloved figure in Millbrook, known for her warm smile and the countless hours she spent volunteering at the local animal shelter. Her final years had been spent in quiet solitude, or so everyone had thought, until the mysterious cat began its nightly vigils. As word spread about the cat's visits, people in town began to whisper and wonder. Some dismissed it as mere coincidence, while others saw something more profound in the animal's unwavering dedication. Sarah, however, felt compelled to dig deeper into the story. Something about the cat's emerald eyes, filled with what seemed like profound sadness, told her there was more to this tale than met the eye. The more Sarah observed, the more intrigued she became by the cat's ritual. Each night, without fail, it would arrive just before sunset, carrying small offerings, sometimes a leaf, other times a flower petal. It would place these gifts carefully at the base of Betty's headstone before settling down beside it, as if keeping watch through the long, dark hours. Local photographer James Parker managed to capture the scene one evening, his images showing the cat gently pressing its forehead against the cold marble of Betty's gravestone. The photographs went viral on social media, drawing attention from news outlets and animal behavior experts who were fascinated by this display of apparent grief and devotion. What made the situation even more mysterious was that no one in town recognized the cat. It wasn't one of the strays from the shelter where Betty had volunteered, nor did it match the description of any missing pets. The cat seemed to appear out of nowhere, as if summoned by some deep connection to the deceased woman that no one yet understood. Sarah began spending her evenings in the cemetery, hoping to learn more about the faithful feline visitor. She noticed that the cat always approached from the eastern side of the cemetery, where a small wooded area separated the grounds from the old industrial district. Following this lead, she decided to trace the cat's path back to its source. The cat's thick fur bore no collar, yet its well-kept appearance suggested it wasn't a stray. Its movements were deliberate and graceful, showing no fear of humans but maintaining a respectful distance. There was an almost regal quality to its bearing, as if it carried an important purpose that humans couldn't quite comprehend. Each evening, the cat would stay until the first light of dawn began to paint the sky. Then, as quietly as it had arrived, it would disappear into the growing light, leaving behind only its small offerings and the questions that continued to multiply in the minds of those who witnessed its vigil. Weather seemed to make no difference to the cat's dedication. Through rain, wind, and even snow, it maintained its nightly visits. Sarah began leaving small bowls of food and water near Betty's grave, touched by the cat's unwavering devotion to whatever mission brought it there night after night. Despite the growing media attention, the cat remained undisturbed by the presence of cameras and curious onlookers. It went about its ritual with the same quiet dignity, seemingly oblivious to the stir it was creating in the human world. The mystery only deepened as winter approached, and the cat's visits continued without interruption. Local historian Robert Jenkins became interested in the case and began researching Betty Thompson's life, hoping to find some connection that might explain the cat's behavior. As he delved into old newspapers and town records, he discovered that Betty's story held more layers than anyone had suspected. Meanwhile, Sarah noticed something else unusual about the cat's behavior. On the nights of the full moon, it would sit up straighter and seem to stare intently at the stars, as if waiting for something or someone. These observations added another layer of mystery to an already compelling story. As Robert Jenkins dug deeper into Betty Thompson's past, he discovered a heartbreaking story that had remained hidden for decades. Through yellowed newspapers and faded photographs, he learned that Betty had once operated a small cat sanctuary from her home, caring for dozens of strays and abandoned felines during the 1980s economic downturn that had hit Millbrook particularly hard. The most surprising discovery came in the form of a diary found tucked away in a box of Betty's belongings that had been donated to the local historical society. The pages told of a special black and white cat named Shadow, who had arrived at her doorstep one stormy night in 1985. Betty had written extensively about this cat, describing it as having distinctive white paws and remarkable emerald eyes. According to the diary entries, Shadow had shown an unusual level of intelligence and empathy, often seeming to sense when Betty was sad or in pain. The cat would bring her small gifts, leaves, flower petals, and even the occasional small twig, as if trying to lift her spirits. The similarities between Shadow's behavior and that of the mysterious cemetery visitor were impossible to ignore. The diary revealed that Betty had suffered a devastating loss that same year. Her only son, Michael, had died in a car accident at the age of 32. Shadow had appeared just days after the funeral, and Betty credited the cat with helping her survive the darkest period of her life. The bond they formed became the foundation of her later work with the animal shelter. But the most troubling discovery came near the end of the diary. In the winter of 1990, Shadow had disappeared without a trace, leaving Betty heartbroken. She had searched for months, putting up posters and walking the streets of Millbrook, calling Shadow's name, but the cat was never found. The last diary entry about Shadow simply read, "I know in my heart that someday, somehow, we'll meet again." Sarah was stunned when Robert shared these findings with her. The timing seemed impossible. If this was the same cat, it would have to be over 35 years old. Yet the physical description matched perfectly, down to the distinctive way the white fur formed a small star pattern on the cat's chest, a detail mentioned in Betty's diary and visible in the recent photographs. The story took an even more mysterious turn when elderly residents of Millbrook began coming forward with their own accounts. Several people remembered seeing a black and white cat with white paws appearing at times of crisis or loss in the community over the years. The cat would appear, offer comfort through its presence, and then vanish as mysteriously as it had arrived. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a veterinary expert consulted by the local newspaper, explained that while cats typically live between 12 to 18 years, there were rare documented cases of cats living into their late 20s. However, a cat living for 35 years seemed biologically impossible. The mystery only deepened when old photographs of Shadow from Betty's diary were compared with current images of the cemetery visitor. They were identical. The town became divided over the nature of the cemetery cat. Some believed it must be a descendant of the original Shadow, while others embraced more supernatural explanations. The local church even held a special service to discuss the spiritual implications of the cat's vigil, drawing hundreds of curious residents and visitors from neighboring towns. As winter deepened, Sarah noticed the cat beginning to show signs of distress. While it never missed a night at Betty's grave, its movement seemed slower, more labored. The small offerings continued, but now they were sometimes accompanied by what sounded like soft cries of mourning. The cat's obvious pain touched something deep in Sarah's heart. The media attention intensified as news outlets picked up on the story's supernatural elements. Professional paranormal investigators arrived in Millbrook, setting up equipment around Betty's grave. Their instruments detected unusual energy patterns centered around the area where the cat kept its vigil, but no concrete explanations were forthcoming. The cat's behavior became more urgent, as if it was trying to communicate something important. It began pawing at the earth near Betty's headstone, something it had never done before. Sarah noticed that its emerald eyes now seemed to hold not just sadness, but a desperate kind of determination. Jennifer Chen, a local animal communicator who had been following the story, offered to visit the cemetery. Upon meeting the cat, she became visibly emotional, claiming that she sensed an overwhelming feeling of love and longing emanating from the creature. According to Jennifer, the cat was carrying a message that needed to be understood before it was too late. The situation reached a critical point when a powerful winter storm was forecast to hit Millbrook. The temperature was expected to drop well below freezing, with heavy snow and dangerous winds. Sarah worried about the cat's safety, but all attempts to capture it or convince it to seek shelter had failed. As the storm approached, the entire town held its breath, wondering if the mysterious feline would finally break its vigil. The night of the storm arrived with a fury that exceeded even the meteorologist's predictions. Wind howled through the cemetery's iron gates, driving sheets of snow between the tombstones. Sarah, unable to bear the thought of the cat facing the storm alone, decided to brave the elements and keep watch from her small cemetery office. Through the frosted windows, she could barely make out Betty's grave in the swirling snow. Yet there, defying all logic and weather warnings, was the familiar silhouette of the black and white cat. But something was different tonight. The cat wasn't sitting in its usual spot. Instead, it was frantically pawing at the frozen ground beside Betty's headstone. Unable to ignore the cat's obvious distress, Sarah bundled up and ventured out into the storm. The wind nearly knocked her off her feet as she struggled toward Betty's grave. As she got closer, she could hear the cat making sounds she'd never heard before. Not quite meows, but almost like words caught between animal and human speech. The cat didn't flee from her approach as it usually did. Instead, it looked at her with those mysterious emerald eyes, now glowing with an almost supernatural intensity in the darkness. To Sarah's amazement, it reached out and gently touched her boot with one white paw, as if asking for help. That's when she noticed something gleaming in the disturbed earth. Using her phone's flashlight, Sarah examined the spot where the cat had been digging. There, partially exposed by the cat's efforts, was a small metal box. With trembling fingers numb from cold, she brushed away the frozen soil and carefully lifted it out. The cat watched intently, its body trembling not from the cold, but from what seemed like anticipation. Inside the box, protected from the elements, Sarah found a collection of photographs, letters, and a sealed envelope addressed simply to Shadow's guardian. The handwriting matched Betty's diary entries. Sarah's hands shook as she opened the envelope, while the cat pressed close against her legs, seeking either warmth or reassurance. The letter inside began, "To whoever finds this, I hope Shadow led you here." Sarah gasped, looking down at the cat, who now sat perfectly still, those intelligent eyes fixed on the paper in her hands. Betty's words continued, revealing a truth more extraordinary than anyone could have imagined. According to the letter, Betty had long suspected that Shadow was more than just a cat. In their years together, she had witnessed too many inexplicable things to believe otherwise. Shadow had appeared to her in dreams, communicating in ways that transcended normal human-animal bonds. Betty had come to believe that Shadow was a guardian spirit, one that had chosen to stay in our world to help those in need. The letter went on to explain that Betty had buried this box shortly before her death, trusting that Shadow would know when it needed to be found. Inside were documents proving that Betty had left her entire estate, including a substantial inheritance from her late husband, to establish a permanent sanctuary for abandoned cats. But the paperwork had gone missing after her death, and her wishes had never been carried out. As Sarah read these words aloud in the howling wind, the cat began to glow with a soft, otherworldly light. The storm around them seemed to pause, snow hanging suspended in the air, as if time itself was holding its breath. In that moment, Sarah understood that she wasn't just witnessing a mystery, she was part of a miracle. The cat, Shadow, had indeed been waiting for this moment. Its mission wasn't just to visit Betty's grave, but to ensure that her final wishes would be fulfilled. The mysterious behavior, the timing of its appearance, the desperate digging in the frozen ground, it all led to this revelation. Betty's legacy would not be lost to time and bureaucracy after all. Through her tears, Sarah watched as Shadow stood and stretched, seeming to grow younger and stronger before her eyes. The cat's form became more ethereal, the light within it growing brighter until it illuminated the entire cemetery. In that radiance, Sarah caught glimpses of other moments: Shadow comforting Betty after her son's death, Shadow watching over sick animals at the shelter, Shadow guiding lost souls home through countless stormy nights. The transformation was both beautiful and heartbreaking to witness. Shadow was completing its earthly mission, and Sarah understood that this would be the last night anyone would see the mysterious cemetery cat. As the light reached its peak intensity, Shadow turned those remarkable emerald eyes to Sarah one final time, conveying a message of gratitude and peace that needed no words. The cat touched its paw to Betty's headstone one last time, and in that touch, Sarah saw decades of love, loyalty, and purpose. Shadow had kept its promise to Betty. They would indeed meet again, but not in this world. As the light began to fade, Sarah felt honored to have been chosen as the witness to this extraordinary reunion. In the days following that extraordinary night, Millbrook transformed in ways no one could have predicted. Sarah, still processing the miraculous events she had witnessed, brought Betty's discovered documents to the town council. The legal papers were verified, and the truth of Betty's final wishes could no longer be denied or ignored. The local media, which had been focused on the mystery of the cemetery cat, now turned their attention to Betty's vision for a permanent cat sanctuary. The story touched hearts across the country, and donations began pouring in from people moved by the tale of Shadow's otherworldly dedication and Betty's compassionate legacy. Betty's old Victorian home, which had stood empty since her passing, became the center of renewed activity. Volunteers from the community came together to renovate the property, turning it into the sanctuary she had always dreamed of creating. The building's front gate was adorned with a custom-made iron sculpture of a sitting cat with distinctive white paws. Sarah found herself appointed as the sanctuary's director, a role that seemed destined for her after her part in uncovering Betty's wishes. She made sure that every detail of the facility honored both Betty's practical vision and Shadow's spiritual connection to the work. The main common room was named Shadow's Haven, and a mural depicting a black and white cat with emerald eyes watched over the space. The impact on the town's stray cat population was immediate and profound. Within months, dozens of abandoned cats found new hope at Betty's sanctuary. Each new arrival was given a thorough health check, gentle rehabilitation, and most importantly, the chance to connect with potential adopters in a calm, loving environment. Perhaps most remarkably, the sanctuary seemed to attract cats that demonstrated unusual empathy and intelligence. Many visitors commented on how the resident cats would somehow know exactly which person needed their comfort most. Some even swore they saw a black and white figure watching over the property on particularly stormy nights. The town historian Robert Jenkins worked with Sarah to create a special memorial room at the sanctuary. Here, they displayed Betty's diary, photographs, and other artifacts that told the story of Shadow's extraordinary dedication. The room became a place of reflection for visitors, many of whom left feeling that they had experienced something beyond ordinary understanding. Jennifer Chen, the animal communicator, became a regular volunteer at the sanctuary. She maintained that the energy of the place was unique, infused with the same loving presence she had sensed from Shadow in the cemetery. Under her guidance, the sanctuary developed special programs for matching cats with people experiencing grief or emotional trauma. The story's impact rippled outward, inspiring other communities to re-examine their approach to animal welfare. Professional skeptics and believers alike visited Millbrook, drawn by the tale of Shadow's supernatural vigil. While they often left with different interpretations of what had happened, all agreed that something remarkable had occurred in this small town. As the seasons changed, the sanctuary flourished in ways that exceeded even Betty's original vision. It became known not just as a place where cats found homes, but where people found healing through their connections with these remarkable animals. The mysterious events in the cemetery had sparked a movement of compassion that showed no signs of slowing. Pine Grove Cemetery, once a place of sadness for Sarah, took on a new significance. Betty's grave became a site of peaceful contemplation, often visited by those seeking inspiration or comfort. Fresh flowers appeared regularly at the headstone, though no one could quite explain who left them there. Local schools began bringing students to the sanctuary for educational programs about animal care and compassion. The children were especially moved by Shadow's story, and many wrote their own stories and drew pictures inspired by the mysterious cemetery cat. Their artwork lined the sanctuary's halls, adding to its warm and hopeful atmosphere. The sanctuary's success attracted attention from veterinary researchers interested in studying the unique bonds between humans and animals. They documented numerous cases of seemingly inexplicable empathy and connection between the sanctuary's cats and their adopters, though none quite matched the extraordinary story of Shadow and Betty. As the first anniversary of that stormy night approached, Sarah organized a special commemoration at the sanctuary. Hundreds of people gathered to celebrate not just the memory of Betty and Shadow, but the continuing miracle of their legacy. The event culminated in the dedication of a new stained glass window, capturing forever the image of a radiant black and white cat with eyes of emerald green, guiding lost souls home. Years have passed since that miraculous night in Pine Grove Cemetery, but the impact of Shadow's devotion continues to ripple through countless lives. The Betty Thompson Cat Sanctuary has become more than just a safe haven for abandoned cats. It has become a testament to the extraordinary power of love that transcends the boundaries between worlds. Sarah, now with silver threading through her hair, still opens the sanctuary doors each morning with the same sense of wonder she felt on that stormy night. She often tells visitors that while Shadow's physical presence may have departed, the spirit of unconditional love that the mysterious cat embodied lives on in every purr, every gentle paw touch, and every life transformed within these walls. The sanctuary's success stories have become legendary in their own right. There's the story of a grieving widow who found renewed purpose after adopting a cat that shared her late husband's distinctive blue eyes, or the tale of an autistic child who spoke his first words to a gentle tabby that seemed to understand him in ways no human could. Researchers studying the sanctuary's unique atmosphere have documented countless unexplainable occurrences. Security cameras occasionally capture glimpses of a familiar black and white figure in the halls late at night, always near residents or visitors in particular distress. The images are never quite clear enough for definitive proof, but those who know Shadow's story just smile knowingly. Betty's grave has become a place of pilgrimage for people from around the world. Visitors leave small tokens, cat toys, flowers, and written notes of gratitude. Many report feeling an overwhelming sense of peace and purpose after spending time there, as if somehow touching the eternal connection between a remarkable woman and her extraordinary guardian angel. The children who first heard Shadow's story are grown now, many with families of their own. They bring their children to the sanctuary, pointing out the stained glass window and sharing the tale of the cemetery cat who loved so deeply that it transcended death itself. The story has become part of Millbrook's soul, a reminder that the purest form of love knows no boundaries. On quiet evenings, especially during storms, Sarah sometimes sits in Shadow's haven and reflects on the true miracle she witnessed. It wasn't just about a supernatural cat or a hidden inheritance. It was about the way a single act of devotion could spark a chain reaction of compassion that continues to grow and touch lives in ways no one could have predicted. The sanctuary's guest book is filled with messages from people whose lives have been changed by their experiences there. Many write about feeling Shadow's presence, describing a sense of being watched over by gentle, emerald eyes. Others share stories of profound healing and unexpected connections that seemed guided by an unseen hand. Professional skeptics still visit occasionally, seeking rational explanations for the events that unfolded in Millbrook. But even they find themselves touched by the palpable atmosphere of love and dedication that permeates the sanctuary. Some of the sanctuary's most devoted volunteers started as skeptics, drawn in by the mystery, but staying for the everyday miracles they witness. Local veterinarians have noted an unusual pattern among the cats at Betty's sanctuary. They consistently show higher levels of empathy and social intelligence compared to the general feline population. Some suggest that Shadow's influence somehow continues to draw special cats to the sanctuary, ones with an extraordinary capacity for healing human hearts. In the sanctuary's memorial room, Betty's diary has become a source of wisdom and inspiration. Her words about Shadow's first appearance, "I know in my heart that someday, somehow, we'll meet again," take on new meaning as visitors recognize the universal truth about love's ability to bridge any gap, even the one between life and death. The town of Millbrook itself has been transformed by Shadow's legacy. Once known only for its historic cemetery, it is now celebrated as a place where the boundaries between the ordinary and extraordinary grow thin, where love can work miracles, and where a cat's devotion changed countless lives for the better. Time moves forward, but Shadow's story remains eternally present in the hearts of all who hear it. It reminds us that sometimes the most profound truths come to us not through grand gestures or loud proclamations, but through the quiet dedication of a simple cat whose love was strong enough to transcend death itself. As the sun sets each evening over Betty's sanctuary, casting long shadows through the stained glass window, visitors often pause to remember the extraordinary events that brought this place into being. And in those quiet moments, many swear they can feel the gentle presence of a special black and white cat with emerald eyes, still watching over those in need, still guiding lost souls home, still proving that love, in its purest form, is the greatest miracle of all.